Hi. For this biology assignment, I chose influenza. The reason I chose this was because I found that this was the most interesting thing, and due to what is happening around the world right now, it's nice to have a background image of influenza and how it started. So, what is it? Influenza is caused by a virus, funny enough, called the influenza virus. It's a contagious respiratory illness that affects the nose, the throat, and sometimes even the lungs. In some unfortunate cases, it will also lead to death. It spreads by droplets that land in the mouth or nose around of the people around you. It could also be contagious in the way that if you sneeze or cough on an item, like some bread, or when you're at the supermarket, some fruits or vegetables, and people within a span of about 5 to 7 minutes touch the same amount, like the same item that you sneezed on, then they and put their hand to their mouth or their nose if there's an itch, then they could also be infected by the disease. Some of the symptoms that show when you have influenza is a headache. If you have a really strong headache and you just feel like it's continuing over and over again, as well as a fever over 37 degrees Celsius. It could also be if you are constantly tired on top of that, have body aches all over your whole entire body. Usually, it depending from person to person, it comes to the neck. You'll have a sore throat. You'll be coughing due to your sore throat, and then in most cases, you'll also have a runny nose. If you're a child, then vomiting and diarrhea may be some possible symptoms that you will be experiencing throughout your influenza. Some of the precautions you could take before, during, and after having influenza could be a yearly vaccine, which I'll come back to later, washing your hands, staying sanitary. This means that no matter where you are, where you've been, what you've touched, what you haven't touched, you will wash your hands when you get home from school, from work, from the supermarket, anywhere you go. You use hand sanitizer wherever it is there. If you are a doctor or something that has to do with people and there's the influenza season, you could wear a surgical mask. You could also disinfect the premises, which means if you were at the supermarket and you're working at the cash machines, then after every fifth person, you could, for example, clean the card terminal or your screen or whatever is around you. It is also very important that you stay hydrated. The more hydrated you are, the better it is for your body. The more liquids you have in your body, the better it is, because usually when you have influenza, you can tend to sweat a lot because you have this cold, but you're sweating at the same time, if that makes sense. Immunity maintenance, if you keep eating and you stay healthy, which also will help, as well as rest. As long as you rest, as long as you're healthy, then it is less likely for you to get the influenza. Going back to the vaccine, you can get a yearly vaccine, which makes you not you'll be immune over for the influenza, but it still might come, but it just won't come as often. The vaccine contains 3 things: influenza A virus, which is an H1N1 called the Michigan strain; influenza A virus H3N2, which is called the Hong Kong strain; or 1 or 2 influenza B viruses called the Brisbane and Phuket strains. In some cases, you might experience some complications when having your influenza. This could be bacterial pneumonia, dehydration, which means that if you have even though you're drinking a lot, then you'll still feel that oozy feeling of not having enough liquid in your systems. In some cases, it can worsen chronic medical conditions such as heart diseases, lung diseases, and stuff like that. You will also, in some cases, usually seen in children, you'll get sinus and ear infections, but this usually will go away when your influenza ends. Population per year. Depending on what is happening around the world, of course, uh, also has an effect on who is getting infected and why they're getting infected and how they're getting infected. So as you can see in this table here, it is from 2018 to 2019 influenza season. As you can see here, from 0 to 4-year-olds, there was an estimate about 3,633,104 that were had this sympathetic illness. And then as you can see here, there were only 2,434,180 people that are 0 to 4-year-olds that went to medical visits. There were 25,328 that went to hospitalization and 266 deaths. This is although only in the 0 to 4-year-olds. If you go down to here, where it says 18 to 49-year-olds, which is a larger span, it would be 11,913,203 for the sympathetic illness. This is usually caused due to it's us in that age group that is more exposed to the illness. Usually it's due to people being ill or people being sick, and other times it's just because most of the time it isn't them that have the vaccine. In this year group, there were 2,450 people that died. Once you get up to your 63, 64, so it would be between these two age groups, you are more exposed to getting influenza. Going back to this one as well, from the 18 to 49-year-olds, when you're pregnant, you also have a larger chance of being exposed to it due to your body is functioning into the new hormones and the new fetus that you're creating in your stomach. Here, there is a smaller amount of people with the sympathetic illness, but there are a larger amount of people that die. This is due to their respiratory systems and their immune systems that aren't strong enough to kill the bacteria away. History. There were, in 1918, there was this whole flu epidemic with influenza. It killed 1/3 of the world population. It was an H1N1 virus. It hadn't expanded to be more. Some of the things that they did back then, because they didn't have a vaccine, was they went to isolation, quarantine. They tried staying hygienic as much as possible. And as I said before, there was no vaccine. As you can see here, where it says influenza milestones in the picture, that in 1917, the United States enters World War. Basically, what happened was there was a guy from the United States Army who had this influenza virus. So when they went to World War I, that was what caused the spread of influenza, which is believed. It's not necessarily correct, but that is what there's believed right now. It was first in 1960 here where the vaccine was created. And it was here where the first real treatment was possible. There were 3 waves in this influenza thing. The first wave was in March. There were about 100 cases. Camp Fusion at Kansas Fort Riley was the one place which was absolutely where people were most infected. There were mass troop contributions that spread the flu, and most people died during this pandemic. The second wave was where economic suffered as business and factories were forced to close due to the amount of sick people because of most people they got sick. This means that kind of like what's happening in the world right now with coronavirus, everything has closed down because to try to stop the spread. In this case, back in the 1918, there wasn't much to do other than close everything down, which basically was what happened in the wave 2. But funny enough, this, as you can see on the graph here, this is wave 1, then there goes a bit, and this is wave 2. Here is where the most people were infected. But then you might ask the question, why were the most people infected here if everything was closed down? Well, this was because right here at the peak is where everything started to change. This is where they decided that they wanted to close down. So everything leading up to here was people from the war coming back home and trying to be with their families and trying to have close contact with people because they've missed them. But that then led to an enormous spread. Wave 3 was when Corps stood in for the Red Cross on an ambulance duty. This was because the Motor Corps, they weren't as affected as the Red Cross ambulance committee was, so they had to stand in for them instead. Some fun facts about influenza. The word influenza actually comes from an Italian word called for influence. It refers to the cause of disease. People believed that planets, stars, and the moon infected the flu. The word influenza was used for the first time in English in 1703. The second one is there have been 4 major flu epidemics in the last century. The Spanish flu, the Asian flu, the Hong Kong flu, and most recent, the swine flu, which caused over 12,000 deaths worldwide. The Spanish flu caused the highest known mortality rates from influenza-related deaths, over approximately 20 million worldwide in 1918. And the last one is, during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, doctors either prescribed shots of whiskey or no alcohol at all. This one I kind of find funny because usually you would say that you have to stay away from alcohol once you have the flu, but not in this case. Others recommended half a bottle of wine a day or a glass of port wine after every hot bath. Many people also relied on folk remedies like eating and bathing in onions as a cure for this disease or this virus. Here are some of the sources that I've used. I used quite a lot because I wanted to make sure that what I was reading was correct. But yeah, thank you.